Imagine getting a phone call that your 16-year-old sister has been kicked out of her own home. So naturally, you rush over, ready to confront whoever did it. But then you discover something that changes everything. The people doing the kicking don't actually own the house. You do. And that's when this family drama takes a very unexpected turn. So today's story starts with a tragedy. 3 years ago, OP's mother passed away. Before her death, she made very specific decisions regarding her estate. The family home, the house where OP and her younger sister grew up, was left to OP. According to OP, it wasn't marital property. It was part of their mother's family inheritance, and she wanted it to stay with her daughters. Meanwhile, a vacation property was left to OP's younger sister, who is currently 16 years old. At the time, that probably seemed straightforward. Unfortunately, the family situation didn't stay simple for very long. Only 6 months after their mother's death, OP's father remarried. And according to the sister, things began changing almost immediately. The new wife moved into the family home. Family photographs started disappearing from the walls. Pictures of OP, pictures of the sister, pictures of their mother, all gone from the main living areas. Instead, those photos were reportedly moved into the younger sister's bedroom. And while that may not sound huge on its own, it sent a message. A pretty clear one. Because when every reminder of the previous family suddenly gets relocated to one room, people are going to notice. Now, fast forward a bit. OP's father and stepmother announce some major news. They're expecting twins. For most families, that would be a happy moment. But for OP's younger sister, it hit differently. She's only 16. She's still grieving her mother, and according to OP, she had a breakdown after hearing the announcement. Which honestly isn't that surprising. Grief doesn't work on a schedule, and 3 years can feel like yesterday when you're still processing a loss. A little while later, the younger sister celebrated her 16th birthday. She invited friends over. The party lasted late into the night. Actually, it lasted into the next morning. Now, before anyone starts blaming the sister, there's an important detail here. Their father knew about the party. He had already approved it. The problem was that he and his wife came home from vacation earlier than expected, and when they walked in, they found teenagers sleeping all over the living room. Which, let's be honest, is pretty much exactly what most teenage sleepovers look like. Nobody looks graceful sleeping on a couch, teenagers especially. But according to OP, the stepmother absolutely lost it. She started yelling at the sister. A huge argument broke out. And then she crossed a line that completely changed the situation. She reportedly told the girl she was just like her late mother, a burden on her father. Think about that for a second. A 16-year-old girl, still grieving her mom, and someone uses her deceased mother as an insult during an argument? That's one of those moments where even Reddit collectively stopped and said, yeah, no. Then things got even worse. The stepmother told the girl to leave and sent her to live with her aunt. Now remember, this wasn't some random adult roommate. This was a minor, a 16-year-old, being kicked out of the house she'd grown up in. And apparently the father just allowed it to happen. Which brings us to the moment OP found out. When OP learned what happened, she was furious. She immediately came home and confronted both her father and stepmother. And during that confrontation, she delivered the plot twist of the entire story. The house wasn't theirs. It never had been. The house legally belonged to OP. The stepmother apparently had no idea. Imagine finding out you've just kicked someone out of a house and the actual owner has just walked through the front door. That is a level of surprise nobody prepares for. OP told them they needed to leave. Immediately. Well, actually within a week. At least, that's what she said in the heat of the moment. The father and stepmother were shocked, especially because the stepmother was 7 months pregnant with twins. But OP had reached her limit. From her perspective, they had spent years disrespecting her mother's memory and had now crossed the line into mistreating her sister. And she wasn't willing to tolerate it anymore. The father didn't take it well. According to OP, he called her a cruel brat and announced that he planned to challenge the will. Which is where things got interesting again, because OP's mother's family had apparently already lawyered up. And according to their attorney, the father doesn't have much ground to stand on. The properties weren't marital assets. They belonged to OP's mother's family. Meaning, this wasn't really a case of a spouse being disinherited. It was inherited family property being passed down exactly as intended. Now, one thing Reddit did point out was that OP couldn't legally throw them out in a week. Evictions usually require notice periods. And to her credit, OP later acknowledged that. She admitted the one-week deadline was emotional and that her lawyer advised giving them a full month. She agreed. The sister moved back home, and OP planned to stay there with her for the duration, which honestly sounds like the smartest move in the entire story. As for Reddit, the verdict was overwhelmingly in OP's favor. One of the most common comments was that the stepmother seemed determined to erase the previous family and replace it with a new one. The photo situation, the comments about the mother, the treatment of the sister. A lot of readers saw a pattern. Another popular comment pointed out something pretty obvious. You can't kick a minor out of a house you don't own, especially when the legal owner supports the child staying there. That argument wasn't exactly winning anyone over. Then came the harshest comment of all. Some Redditors speculated that the stepmother's attitude might change very quickly now that she knows the house isn't part of some future inheritance. In other words, she may have been a lot more interested in the situation when she thought dad owned everything. Reddit can be absolutely savage sometimes. Looking at this objectively, though, there are a few separate issues here. First, grief. The younger sister is still dealing with the loss of her mother. Second, boundaries. The father allowed his new marriage to create tension without protecting his children. And third, respect. Even if the birthday party was excessive, there are about 100 better ways to handle that situation than insulting a child's deceased mother. That's the moment where most people stopped sympathizing with the stepmother. In real life, blended families can absolutely work, but they usually require patience, empathy, and respect for the people who are already there. What they don't require is removing family photographs, dismissing grief, and kicking teenagers out of their own homes. That's usually a recipe for disaster. And in this case, it ended with the people who thought they were in charge discovering they weren't. So what do you think? Was OP justified in starting the eviction process after what happened to her sister? Or should she have tried to find another solution, considering the stepmother is 7 months pregnant? And where do you draw the line between protecting family and taking revenge? Let me know in the comments.